Hong Kong shares surge after Trump's phone call with Xi suggests a plan to settle Sino-US trade war. 2 more jailed over fake tests for Macau-Zhuhai Bridge as authorities pledge more buses to handle passenger flow. And campaign ad targeting migrants to America condemned as racist.
Good evening. Global stock markets rocketed higher today after U.S. President Donald Trump asked his cabinet to start drafting a trade deal with China. It boosts hope of a ceasefire in the ongoing trade war. All this came after Trump gushed about his very good phone conversation with President Xi Jinping last night. Jeff Tang reports.
All it took was a phone call between U.S. President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. The 12-hour time difference between Beijing and Washington did not stop the leaders of the world's 2 biggest economies from waxing lyrical about resolving their bitter trade dispute. This as Xi and Trump prepare for their high-stakes meeting later this month on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Argentina. Investors lapped it up like bees to a honeypot. It didn't even matter to them that there were scant details about their conversation or what might be involved in the deal. Positive sentiment alone sent all 3 major US indices up more than 1% at the close. And Asian markets were more than happy to jump on the bandwagon, none more so than in Hong Kong. The Hang Seng Index soared 1,070 points, or 4.2%, in its biggest single-day gain since December 2011. Investors poured money into market favourite Tencent, which surged more than 9%, with turnover reaching almost $20 billion. That's nearly 1/8 of the entire market's $170 billion turnover today. Mainland investors also cheered the encouraging developments on the trade front, propelling the Shanghai Composite Index 2.7% higher. The bulls were also unleashed across Asia, with Japan's Nikkei 225 surging 2.6%, while South Korea's Kospi closed up 3.5%, its biggest gain in almost 7 years. Jeff Tang, TVB News.
2 laboratory technicians have been jailed for 21 and 23 months, respectively, for faking concrete test results on the mega bridge to Macau and Zhuhai. Chiu Chi-hing and Poon Kawai earlier pled guilty to conspiracy to defraud. The pair were accused of faking compression test results on the concrete used in the construction of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. They worked at a lab contractor for the Civil and Engineering Development Department. They were among 18 people charged by the ICAC over the scandal.
Meanwhile, complaints over shuttle bus services on the mega bridge have prompted bus operators and the government to step up their game. Our Sharon Tang has that story.
During peak hours last Sunday, the Hong Kong port saw some 3,500 travellers an hour, with many waiting to get on shuttle buses. Currently during rush hour, these buses depart every 5 minutes, but it didn't seem to help last weekend as queuing took up to 3 hours. Authorities say this is a common phenomenon at many other control points, but new measures will be introduced to shorten the wait.
With the current deployment of over 100 buses, by the shuttle bus companies, actually, if you look at the total demand, it can be well coped with. The problem is people come at the same hours, and there are more tour groups. Try to divert some of the group tours to use cross-boundary coaches so as to reduce the pressure on shuttle buses.
Under the arrangement, tour groups will be able to book coach services in advance. That will help secure seats and minimize waiting time. But these coaches only depart from 4:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. each Sunday, with 24 departures an hour. Also, bus operators today announced they had also purchased 18 more single-deckers. That brings the total of shuttle buses in use to 138. With high passenger numbers expected on weekends, more rented buses will be deployed, which means at least 150 shuttle buses on the weekend. Would these measures help alleviate the situation? This woman from Macau worries that elderly people won't know how to book services online. Meanwhile, this man says he will not consider using the booking system, as he may well opt for ferries which depart around the hour regularly. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
The security minister is under fire for downplaying the case of a taxi driver who died from a neck injury after his arrest by police. The coroner's court has ruled the death an unlawful killing. Christy Leung with details.
That's tragic. Or rather, this is unfortunate.
That's how the Security Secretary John Lee described the death of a taxi driver during a police arrest in 2012. The 65-year-old died a month after he was put in a headlock and then lifted onto the police van. The coroner's court ruled his death an unlawful killing last week. A Pan Democrat criticized the government and police for downplaying the seriousness of the case.
So we have to be careful with the choice of words. Illegally killed by the law enforcement officer, that's ruled by the court. You can't give the impression this the death of natural causes.
But a pro-establishment lawmaker worried the ruling would harm police morale.
They followed the instructions they learned from the training school, but because of some unexpected events, there is a problem with them, and they are now being prosecuted. That is a really setback to police morale.
The security minister says police will study how to strike a balance between enforcing the law and avoiding any legal pitfalls.
There is a heavy legal responsibility in enforcing the law. Suggestions are now being considered so that in enforcing the law, police officers can achieve the objective without worrying what they have done will lead to legal consequences, so that they can serve the public in a reasonable manner.
Lee added that police will also study the court's recommendations to reduce any possibility of illegal actions during law enforcement. This includes installing surveillance cameras with sound recording functions on police vans. Christy Leung, TVB News.
The United States has charged companies in China and Taiwan, along with 3 individuals, with stealing trade secrets from Idaho-based Micron. It's a technology that stores memory in electronics. The Trump administration has already imposed restrictions on technology exports to one of the indicted companies, Fujian Jinhua Integrated Circuit Company.
From 2013 to 2016, the Department of Justice did not charge anyone with spying for China. But since the beginning of 2017, we've charged 3 people with spying for China or attempting or conspiring to do so. And when it comes to trade secret theft, we are currently prosecuting 5 other cases where the theft or attempted theft was for the benefit of the Chinese government.
In a slap against the United States, the United Nations General Assembly has overwhelmingly approved a resolution condemning the U.S. embargo of Cuba. It's also rejected U.S. amendments that strongly criticize the lack of human rights in the communist country.
Once again, we were reminded why so many people believe that faith in the United Nations is often misplaced. The countries that profess to believe in human rights have lost too. They have earned a justified measure of doubt that they will act to defend their beliefs. And most of all, the Cuban people have lost. They have been left, once again, to the brutal whims of the Castro dictatorship.
Resolutions adopted by the 193-member body are unenforceable but do reflect world opinion. The rebuke by the UN comes as the United States imposed new sanctions on Cuba and Venezuela and promised additional penalties against Nicaragua. They were announced by U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton in Miami, home to thousands of Cuban exiles. He condemned the oppression and totalitarianism in the countries that he called the Troika of tyranny.
And still ahead in our newscast, the government to unveil smart technology next year to manage the city's prisons. CCTV footage revealed final moments before fatal bus crash in Chongqing. And time's up. Google employees say enough already to sexual harassment.
綠茶經過高溫烘焙成為焙茶，茶湯金黃，味道溫和不苦澀，獨特嘅烘焙香氣，北川半冰為商店，傳說焙茶。
Welcome back to TVB News. Better prison and security and management is on the way. As Kayla Chu reports, the government is hoping smart technology will make the city's prisons easier to control.
At present, Correctional Services Department staff carry out prison patrols every 15 to 20 minutes. But in between patrols, the temptation grows for inmates to start fights or to take their own lives. Despite the presence of surveillance cameras, risks may not always be identified immediately. The government is now addressing the problem by stepping up security measures using smart devices.
If they're fighting in the canteen, maybe the inmates may congregate in a certain area. So we'll conduct an image analysis to input a lot of data into the system so as to see where there's some kind of activities which may deviate from the normal.
The department is looking into installing surveillance cameras which can analyze inmates' behavior. It will send off an alarm to alert prison staff once abnormalities such as fighting are detected. Reportedly, some of these devices will first be installed and tested at the male-only minimum security Pick-Uck prison. Another new device will be introduced at the Lowu Correctional Institution for female inmates. Prisoners there will wear a bracelet. It will collect data on the wearer's subsistence indices like their heartbeat for signs of suicide attempts and self-harm. The technology could eventually be introduced to the hospitals of correctional institutions as well, according to the security chief. Sources say the two systems are expected to be introduced next year. They will operate while adhering to requirements of the Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data. Currently, the department can keep footage collected for up to 31 days. The same rule will prevail under the new system. Kayna Chu, TVB News.
Lawyers took aim today at a witness from China Technology, the subcontractor which has made allegations of shoddy work at Hong Kong Station. Haley Zhou reports.
Jason Poon, the managing director of China Technology, answered questions from the lawyer representing Feng Sheng, a subcontractor responsible for steel fixing work at Hong Kong Station. Feng Sheng's lawyer pointed out that Poon had claimed cutting steel bars short might have saved Feng Sheng money. The lawyer argued there was no economic incentive for it to do so. That's because cutting all the steel bars before screwing them into couplers would double the amount of work and time. Jason Poon replied on all 4 occasions when he witnessed the cutting, the workers were late in uniforms. He didn't mean the cutting was done by Feng Sheng. Even though those workers were wearing latent uniforms, Jason Poon admitted that he didn't press them further on whether they were really latent employees. He later found out Leighton sometimes distributed their uniforms to others. The lawyer for the MTRC asked why Poon didn't make a report directly to Leighton at the site. Poon said Leighton hardly carried out any supervision work at the site, saying they were either sitting in their room or going out for tea and only showed up when MTR officials came. The lawyer pressed him further why he didn't report the issue to the MTRC right away. He said at first he was afraid it would lead to a poor working relationship with the MTRC. The hearing continues on Monday. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
New details are emerging about last Sunday's deadly bus crash in Chongqing, in which 15 people were killed. Investigators say it started with a fight between a passenger and a driver. Police have released security camera video from just before the crash showing a woman sparring with the driver after missing her stop. She was also seen hitting the driver's head with her phone twice. Soon after the driver tried to fight back, the bus went off the bridge and plunged into the river below. A private car was also hit. So far, 13 bodies have been recovered. 2 are still missing.
Overseas again, and Google employees around the world staged a mass walkout yesterday in a revolt against the treatment of women and unchecked executive power. Alan Booknia reports.
Thousands of Google employees told bosses, "Time's up." Among the issues, better handling of workplace sexual harassment and discrimination in the male-dominated tech giant. It comes after the New York Times reported that in 2014, Google gave Android creator Andy Rubin a $90 million severance package after sexual misconduct allegations against him were deemed credible.
This was, the $90 million straw that broke the camel's back, to be honest. But there are so many stories that we've heard for so long, and it's time for action and change, real change.
Time's up.
Hoping it'll create conversations and then create actions.
There was also a brief walkout at the Google offices in Cambridge. This mid-level employee who interviews job seekers says she's seen several incidents of workplace harassment that go unpunished.
I'm tired of taking young women, like the woman I interviewed last week, and pushing her into a pipeline that I know is full of acid and ends in a meat grinder. Time is up. If Google says this is a pipeline problem, they need to fix what's happening in that pipeline.
Google says 48 employees have been fired for sexual harassment over the last 2 years, including 13 senior managers.
Moments like this show that we didn't always get it right, and so we are committed to doing better.
While workers from other companies protest all the time, usually over wages, the Google walkout, with its well-paid employees, is seen as quite different. Worker unrest at the company helped scuttle a project to help the U.S. military scan battlefields using drones and artificial intelligence. Workers have also protested against Google's plans to launch a censored search engine in China. Alan Buknia, TVB News.
And that's our news.
Good night.